This is Stand Up for the Truth, addressing important issues and topics affecting Christians across the nation.
Crash Connell, along with Mary Danielson, haven't seen you since last year. A little bit of chaos going on here in the control. We need control.
Oh, man.
We have lost control. Chaos and control. Where have I heard that before?
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, January 2 on the calendar, 2025. Welcoming our live listeners at q90fm.com/listen. And fortunately, because of the way the world is, we always have something to talk about here.
Always. And today is absolutely no exception. We're welcoming back John Haller today for a snapshot of the world at the very beginning of 2025. So far, I'm not terribly impressed. And I got some red and green cobwebs in my head from the holiday season. So time to get rolling. It's a new year. It's a new week, more or less. So let's just jump in with our scripture today. Psalm 66, 1-5. Excuse me. Make a joyful shout to God, all the earth. Sing out the honor of his name. Make his praise glorious. Say to God, how awesome are your works. Through the greatness of your power, your enemies shall submit themselves to you. All the earth shall worship you and sing praises to you. They shall sing praises to your name. Selah. Come and see the works of God. He is awesome in his doing toward the sons of men. Amen. Let's pray together. Oh, Lord, we come before you in this new year, watching and waiting for those things that you promised to your people long, long ago. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear, that we might continue to put the things of the kingdom before everything else, and also bring hope and cheer to those we encounter and the hope of the gospel. Lord, we thank you that we can know what to watch for, and we ask that you'd help us to be an encouragement to those who may not comprehend the great privilege it is just to be alive in this season of time. We lift up those who are suffering from illnesses or grieving loss. Lord, draw near to them and give them much grace at this time. We lift up the victims, the families of the victims of terror, Lord, that you would just comfort them as only you can, Lord. We lift up John and his loved ones for good health, protection, for wisdom and direction in this coming year as they seek to serve you with the gifts that you have given them. And we ask all these things in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Pastor, lawyer, and teacher, known for his weekly prophecy updates, a trial lawyer for almost 40 years, John serves as an elder at Fellowship Bible Chapel. His prophecy updates, loaded with current insights, are available on the Fellowship Bible Chapel, or FBC, YouTube channel. Always on the cutting edge. John, welcome back to Stand Up.
Good to be back with you. So we're actually praising the Lord a little bit here early in the year. Of course, Ohio State won yesterday in the football playoffs. So that means there's not we don't like it when Ohio State loses because there's a lot of depressed people around town. But then a praise here, Pam, my wife of almost 50 years, the last 4 years she has been without or highly distorted sense of taste and smell post Charlie Vector 019er. And that came back about 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So, so it's, we always wonder if it's going to be day to day, but it's completely, I don't think we realize what a wonderful thing that God did for us when he gave us a sense of taste and smell. And when it goes away, it's very, very difficult. But so she's back, and it's totally changed her mental attitude.
Wow,
so.
That's fantastic. For me, it was over 2 years. And I talked to a physician, and he said usually over 18 months you never get it back. But with God, all things are possible. So I rejoice with her because, if something's cooking on the stove and you can't smell it, you can burn the house down. I know that's, just things that you take for granted, John. So that's fantastic.
But speaking of burning the house down, there's the news. And Bible, wonderful transition that you planned.
Yeah,
there,
I love that. Great segue.
I think. Well, we were sort of joking beforehand, and I think you mentioned it in your opening about, how far are we going to get into this year before we long for the good old days of 2024? And the answer is we may already have reached that point.
Yes.
And we still have 18 days to go until Trump is supposed to be sworn in as the next president of the United States, although he's certainly being treated as the president by a lot of people in the world. But we know that there might be some January surprises coming and that type of thing. And I think, isn't Monday aren't they doing a day of mourning or something here for Jimmy Carter?
Yeah. I think it's
I don't remember them
It's
doing
the
that
9th.
for other presidents.
No, and the interesting thing is, he passed away and Biden's on the way out. I consider them kind of bookends to this progressive season that we've had with only, not much time in between for the conservatives to actually do anything or keep anything in motion, keep the balls in the air. I find that rather interesting. Last time you were on, John, the first thing we talked about was Carter turning 100, and so now here you on again, and he has died. And someone asked me on social after I posted an article about his presidency from Front Page Mag called "Jimmy Carter Was Never a Good Man," why it matters. Why should we talk about someone after they're gone? What good does it do? But John, assessing a presidential legacy honestly is important because the things that they did still affect us today. Americans need to do this honestly because the media certainly isn't going to. I want to quote from the New York Times, John. They said, Carter was the most intelligent, hardworking, and decent man to have occupied the Oval Office in the 20th century. Oh, please. But this article goes into the family corruption, his cover-ups for global dictators, empowering terrorism, his hatred for Israel. John, give us a brief eulogy of your thoughts on Mr. Carter.
Well, I think the one thing that I remember about Jimmy Carter, of course, Jimmy Carter was president just in the early days that Pam and I were married. And I remember, interest rates of 17, 18% of home mortgages. And all of that. And so I would say that if I wanted to say that Jimmy Carter excelled at anything, I would say that Jimmy Carter excelled at being totally wrong on every major issue that faced America in the last 40 or 50 years. He was an abysmal president. He, under his watch, the Islamic Republic of Iran, which still continues to dominate the daily news.
That's right.
And other things came into being, and he was wrong on everything he ever said or did or uttered about Israel. And that's a big deal. And that legacy continues. And, I know we didn't really plan on talking about that, but the rise of anti-Semitism on the right has been anti-Israel, anti-Jewish hatred is what I mean by anti-Semitism has just been stunning. We see people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, my friend Dumasani Washington, who I interviewed a few months ago, I guess it's been 6 months ago now, did an article on Tablet called The Arsonist talking about Tucker Carlson and his interview of a guy named Munther Isaac. The title of the article was The Arsonist. Tucker Carlson tries to burn down the bridges between Christianity and Jews in the world. And I think that that's true. I see it everywhere I look. My social media feed, and I don't know why I get it, is just I'm inundated every day with just this outright overt Jew hatred. I have had friends, Mary, who have completely flipped in the last year on the subject of Israel. And it's absolutely stunning. And there's a lot of parallels that go on between the lawfare that went on against former president and now soon to be our new president, Trump, the parallel of the lawfare going on against Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel by the leftists over there. It's absolutely, at a time of war, Benjamin Netanyahu is being dragged into testimony on trials. I was in Israel 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, and we were over the Knesset. They were forming the new government. And I was asking people over there, what's this deal with these trials against Netanyahu? And I said, how long are these things going to go on? And I was told another 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And here we are 2 years later, they're in the midst of the war, and he's having to spend a couple days a week in testimony. He has to stop the testimony to go deal with issues that are coming up in the war that Israel's facing on 7 fronts. And this is just absolutely shocking. And so they did the same thing to former President Trump. We just had another 4 years of things. I think Trump is going to rectify some of the things regarding J6 when he gets into office. At least he's promised to do that. And I hope he issues pardons to the people that were convicted of praying outside abortion clinics.
Yeah. Yes. I've thought
And
about
by the
that
way,
too.
I know you've had people on from up there in Wisconsin. You had some pregnancy assistance centers that were bombed. Has anything happened on any of those? I haven't seen anything.
Boy, I'm trying to think here. They did catch the person who bombed the Madison office of Julian Appling. Okay. They did catch that person, and I'm drawing a blank at the moment on how that all came out. But anything else I'm not up on, I probably should get some info on that so we can update people.
It's stunning, and I'm a lawyer, so I know how the legal system can be used against people, and we've seen this on steroids. So I'm going to just tell you that I know people on the Trump side of this that are loaded for bear to rectify what's been done. And I can't say that I disagree with it, because I think if you let it go, you only get more of it. So anyway, Jimmy Carter's legacy is atrocious. Mm-hmm. His acceptance of things like the infamous Goldstone report, the book he wrote on apartheid. He did not understand anything that went on over there. He had a completely unbiblical view on the whole situation.
Yeah. And I know Israel 365 News says he paved the way for the Iranian Islamic regime to become the world's largest state sponsor of terror. So here we are. I think that's one of the worst things that can be said of anybody, as far as I'm concerned. So let's move on. As long as we were talking about Israel here, clearly the top story of the second half of 2023 and all of 2024. But let's talk about the last 4 months, John. Victory after victory that Israel has achieved, and the Syrian connection. Tie that together for us.
Sure. Well, I think the one thing to remember of what's happened over the look, October 7th, 2023, Israel was invaded by Hamas. It wasn't a terror attack or anything like this. This was thousands of people coming in. And there's a lot of fallout in Israel about, who knew what and why didn't they prepare for it? Why did they not let it happen? Now, just within the last 2 days, a large report, I'm still kind of going through that. It's in Hebrew, so it's a little bit difficult to read through it. But what happened was Hamas planned that attack for years. And the intel is coming out about how many people were involved in this. They're picking up emails, communiques, internal, because they've been able to get the computers of Hamas as they've gone through trying to clean up Gaza. And they still have a major problem in Gaza. There are still soldiers being killed almost daily from the IDF. They clean an area, they go back 3 days later, and soldiers are killed in an area that they had just cleared because there's several hundred miles of tunnels. But what a lot of people don't know is that the attack that Hamas did was also to be coordinated with an attack from Hezbollah in the north. And the goal was that they would invade from the south, Hezbollah from Lebanon in the north. They would meet in Tel Aviv. And their goal was to have 1 million casualties, dead, injured, or hostage, in a very short period of time.
Wow.
It almost seems like there was sort of a divine intervention that went on. Hezbollah did not attack. Hezbollah did start launching rockets. And then in September, which was just a little over 3.5 months ago, Israel did the attack. They just did a big report on it on 60 Minutes last week on what we call the Grim Beeper attack. Mm-hmm. The beepers exploded. That operation was planned for years, maybe a decade.
Wow.
And it was a stunning attack. It injured mainly the people of Hezbollah. And a lot of people said, "Oh, it was cruel. It was nasty." Listen, these people's sole reason for existence was to destroy Jews in Israel.
Yeah.
So it's war. And, in war, things happen and people die. And this attack was stunning. We've seen the images, the pictures of it. Understand that so Hezbollah responded starting on October 8th, 2023. They launched well over 10,000 rockets, missiles, mortars into Israel. One attack killed 12 children playing in a soccer up in Majel Shams, a Druze village, a Druze town in the north of Israel up near Mount Lebanon. And there were concerns. I interviewed security experts from Israel that Hezbollah was going to attack. They're going to launch. They had 150,000 rockets. They could launch thousands a day. And they were going to be estimated to be 200 dead Israelis every day for a very long period of time. That never came about. When we were talking about 20,000 dead IDF. The total was under 1,000, and 400 of those were killed on October 7th, 2023. The total dead in Lebanon is a little bit above 50. This is stunning. And so they did the Grim Beeper attack. They took out all these people in Hezbollah. They even partially blinded an Iranian ambassador to Lebanon who had one of these Hezbollah pagers. And during that year, Israel killed over 500 Hezbollah in that first year after October 7th in Lebanon. Every one of those persons from Hezbollah received a martyr memorial page at the Al-Manar Hezbollah media website. Every single one of them, Mary, had a picture of the guy, and below it was the Hezbollah symbol and the Dome of the Rock from Jerusalem. And every one of those martyr pages said he was martyred on the road to Jerusalem, because that was their goal. We need to keep in mind that in this Islamic theological thinking behind this terror and everything is this push to Jerusalem. So they did that. The next day, they said, stop using the pagers. So they went to walkie-talkies. Those exploded at the funerals and took them out. And these people, the imagery that was put up, it seems kind of cruel, but we need to understand that this is a war for the survival of people. The images were put up of these people without they told them you have to pick up your pager with both hands. And so both hands were damaged. They lost their eyes. So there's pictures of these guys going to mosque in Iran, being led around because they have no hands, they have no eyes, and that sort of thing. And it's just absolutely, but they considered that a victory. That's their mindset is so warped. That's why what Jimmy Carter did with Iran was so warped, because he did not understand the mindset. So Israel, they took out all of the major leadership of Hezbollah. And then they invaded shortly thereafter. They invaded Lebanon, started taking out these terror cells along the border, tunnels and complexes full of weapons and that type of thing. I mean, the images are just absolutely stunning as they've blown these up. It blows up a whole village area because the whole village was a terror base underground. It was then revealed that Israel, in the first year after the war, did 700 operations into Lebanon to take out these facilities. Nobody knew about that. So Israel had stunning victory after stunning victory. They decimated the leadership of Hezbollah. They decimated the leadership of Hamas. In fact, before they did the Beeper attack, they had taken out one of the top two guys in Hamas in a assassination in Tehran in a facility by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard safe house. They did a massive military operation 4 months ago in Syria, where they took out this massive Iranian manufacturing base and apparently captured some people and brought them back, and have been gathering intel from them. So they've had this victory after victory after victory after victory. And they 50, 60 soldiers that have been killed up there in Lebanon. That's tragic, but it's way, way below. It's a small, small percentage of what everybody thought was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then they entered into, it was the very kind of strange thing. They entered into the ceasefire in October. There's a big attack from Iran. Israel responded. Israel took out all the air defenses from Syria and including the air defenses in Iran. Iran is left completely exposed at the moment. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 weeks before Trump takes office.
Okay.
There's a lot of talk that the Iranians are really ramping up their development of a nuclear weapon and getting that finished up. And so now the question is, what's going to happen? Are people going to wait till Trump comes into office? They're going to attack before. So the next couple of weeks are going to be potentially even more intense than the last few months.
Wow.
But they took out they entered into the ceasefire. And as they entered into the ceasefire in November, Iran, all of a sudden now Syria is attacked by these rebels from the north, and coming from the south. They met in Damascus, and they took over Syria in less than 11 days.
Yeah.
And so we're now coming out to see that a lot of what was behind that was Turkey. Turkey was behind that. Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, has long wanted to reconstitute the Ottoman Empire.
Yep.
He was in control of a large part of northern Syria, southern Turkey. He hates the Kurds. He thinks all of the Kurds are terrorists. And if he could wipe out the Kurds tomorrow, he would. The Kurds are about 40 million people that live in Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. They're the largest ethnic group in the world without their own country. They have an oil-rich region. But Erdogan thinks that they are a threat to him. So there's war going on right now in northeastern Syria between Turkish forces and the Kurdish forces, and it's been kind of a back and forth. Some days the Turks do well, some days the Kurds do well. But I've seen videos of these. But Turkey backed the Islamic rebels that took over Syria. These guys are Al-Qaeda, they're al-Nusra, they're ISIS people. And now this guy who's the leader of it, this al-Jilani guy, he's changed his name again. I can't remember what his most recent name is. He's wearing a suit, he's talking, and every leader in the world, from the head of the European Union to Qatar to Saudi Arabia to Egypt, everybody's making a beeline to get on his good side. The horrors of the Assad regime are being revealed daily, the prisons that he kept, the massive drug empire that he used to finance his regime, this highly addictive drug called Captagon that he sold throughout the Middle East. But what we're learning is that Erdogan was very clever. He saw an opportunity to remake Syria and to expand his influence because he has an ultimate goal. A couple of weeks ago, Erdogan gave a speech at one of his party gatherings in Turkey. They're coming up on elections in the next year or two, so they're already starting to campaign for that. He's been in charge of Turkey now for about 22 years. He's completely remade Turkey, but the chant at the meeting was, "Chief," they're referring to Erdogan, "take us to Jerusalem, chief, take us to Jerusalem, chief, take us to Jerusalem."
Yeah.
And Erdogan's response to that was, "Victory comes to the patient." And that sort of shows his mindset. He takes a long-term, this may not happen in my lifetime, but I'm going to set in place for the rise of Islam. He's Muslim Brotherhood.
Sure.
And so he had a coup attempt back in 2016. I don't know how much time we have until the break. But in 2016, there was a coup attempt. He received assistance from Putin and Russia to put that down. And by the way, when we talk about this in Bible prophecy terms, there's an argument about whether Russia's involved or not. There's no argument that Turkey and the Turkish ethnic group, I believe, is involved in this end-time invasion of Israel with the ethnic Turk uh, Central Asian Stan republics. They're Islamic republics. There's a very close ethnic uh, relationship. And by the way, the Turks took over the Anatolia Peninsula, what's now Turkey. They came from Central Asia. So what we see is this thing that the Ezekiel and other prophets talked about a couple millennia ago is now sort of unfolding right in front of our eyes. So Erdogan puts down the coup attempt. And the Turkish military had always been secular. Ataturk set up the Turkish government 100 years ago to keep it secular and non-Muslim. Erdogan has changed that. So he developed a thing called Sadat. It's a private security firm. It's very much modeled after, I think it's modeled after the Wagner group that Putin has used to put his influence in all through Africa, in other places, and also in Syria. So he set that up. Erdogan sent some of those contractors to Libya to interfere in Libya. Libya is in a civil war. And it's interesting, Russia and Turkey are on separate sides of that civil war that continues in Libya, a lot of which started because of our interference with Gaddafi. And the assassination, the killing of Gaddafi back in, when was this, 2012 or 13?
Yeah, Arab Spring was 2011, so somewhere in there, yeah.
Well, in the Arab Spring, really, it started in Tunisia, but it quickly moved to Syria in March of 2011, because I remember I was in Israel at the time, and there were reports of riots going on 30 miles away from where we were in north of Israel. And that was the start of the Syrian civil war. And by the way, 500,000 to 1 million Syrians killed by the Syrian government and Russia in Syria, and not a single protest at Harvard or Yale or UCLA or anywhere about those dead Syrians, including the complete destruction of Palestinian refugee camps by Assad in Damascus. Nobody talks about that. But let Israel defend itself and the world melts down.
Yeah.
It's a stunning thing to watch. So anyway, so this guy that he put in charge of Sadat, he came out, my friend Jonathan Spire wrote an article about it. And then there was another article came out in 2019. And he said, what we're doing through this group, this military contractor group that Erdogan has set up, is we are preparing for the coming of the Mahdi. Wow. Now, Turkey is Sunni, and we always think of the Mahdi being the Iranian back thing. And they have different ideas of the Mahdi, but they both believe in this coming leadership figure that's going to take over the world for Islam. And so that's what Erdogan's been doing through this private contractor group. So they took the experience they got in Libya and they moved it over to Syria, and they took that, they helped those rebels take Syria over in a couple days.
Okay.
And then yesterday in Istanbul was a massive demonstration in support of what's going on. And the poster of it is stunning. The poster of it shows it's like a sun rising over the bridge. It's the Galatian Bridge in Istanbul. They had well over 100,000. You see the sun there. The left side of it being Turkish flag, the right side being the Palestinian, and the big title and the big white letters is "A Sun Rises." And it's interesting, that was led by Erdogan's son, whose name kind of has some kind of sun meaning into it. I'm still trying to unpack that.
Interesting.
But at the top, it says, yesterday, Hagia Sophia. And below that is a picture of Hagia Sophia, the largest church ever built in the history of Christianity. And so understand the imagery. This is Erdogan. This is approved by him. First, Hagia Sophia. We have taken over Christendom. We took over, and what Erdogan did several years ago was he took the Hagia Sophia. It was a church, then it became a mosque. Ataturk turned it into a museum 100 years ago. A few years ago, Erdogan turned that back into a mosque.
Okay. John, we got to take a break. We're at that point.
Okay.
We got to take a 2-minute break here. Talking to John Haller today. So many headlines and people and players to weave together in the Middle East, and what is happening over there is just incredible, and it's difficult to keep up. But we're so grateful for John to at least help us to try to do that. So we'll be back in 2 minutes with more. Stay tuned to Stand Up for the Truth.
Thank you so much for sharing today's Stand Up for the Truth video podcast. We invite you to check out our other headline news site, ctrnn.org. That's ctrnn.org.
Feedback, questions, and topic suggestions are always appreciated. Email us at comments@standupforthetruth.com.
Welcome back to Stand Up for the Truth for this first Thursday, at least for us here at Q90 and Stand Up for the Truth in 2025. And we're already, our heads are spinning, and we're already looking in so many different directions for what's going on. John, you wanted to finish the conversation about this gentleman who was the head of the HTS rebels, al-Jolani, who now is talking about, it's going to be 3 years in Syria before there's a constitution. There's a lot of cleanup work to do, and it's going to be 4 years before there's an election. Oh, John, it's just so much to keep up with. But you wanted to talk about this connection with Turkey, so let's finish that conversation.
Sure. Well, there's no question that Turkey was backing these rebels that took over Syria. I mean, this is, and understand, when Erdogan said a couple weeks ago, victory comes to the patient, he meant what he said, that he's been very patient. They've been building these militia up in Syria for the last 4 or 5 years. And when the opportunity came, Israel decimated Hezbollah. Israel neutralized Hezbollah. They neutralized Hamas to a large degree. I mean, certainly those are going to be going on for a while. The rebels said, this is our opportunity to take down Assad, an Iranian puppet in Syria. And they did that. So, but yesterday in Istanbul, they had this poster come out, A Sun Rises. We talked about Hagia Sophia, the largest church in Christendom. Yesterday, Christendom. Then the middle part of it says, today, Umayyad. The Umayyad Mosque in Damascus is the most important mosque of the Umayyad dynasty, which was a Persian-based Islamic empire that ruled the Middle East for a very long time, and ruled all the way into Spain and into Europe. Their main mosque was the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. So the poster says, yesterday, Hagia Sophia, today, Damascus. And so that tower in the center of the page, that's one of the minarets of the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. Okay. And by the way, when al-Jolani took power, one of the first things he did was he went to Damascus and he went and gave a talk at the Umayyad Mosque. That was incredibly significant from a religious and political aspect, because you can't separate political Islam from religious Islam. They're united that way. And then on the right, the last phrase is tomorrow al-Aqsa. And below that phrase, you see a picture of the Dome of the Rock. There's been a redefinition by Islam of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It used to be the Al-Aqsa Mosque was just the mosque at the southern end. But now they consider the whole compound to be Al-Aqsa. Okay. Wow. The Dome of the Rock being the biggest symbol, the gold dome of the Dome of the Rock, which, by the way, wasn't a gold dome 100 years ago. It's been in the last 50 or 60 years that dome was made gold by the Jordanian government that runs that area. And understand that when Hamas invaded Israel in late in October of 2023, the operation was called Al-Aqsa Flood. We're going to flood Al-Aqsa.
Yeah, I remember that.
Iran has picked up on that, and now you have Turkey using the same imagery and talk, tomorrow Al-Aqsa, which means, so yesterday Christianity, now then the Persian version of Islam, and then Jerusalem and the Jews. That's the ultimate goal. And so, as I mentioned, when Nasrallah was taken out, the Almanar website put up a big banner at the top of their webpage for a couple of months, says he was martyred on the road to Jerusalem. That's what this is all about. Now, we should not be surprised about that as Christians if we're following Bible prophecy, because it says in the end times that Jerusalem will be a cup of trembling.
Right.
But, you know, we haven't known exactly how all of this is going to come together as to how all of these nations make a push. So what happened in Syria was incredibly significant. Iran left. They pulled their people out. Russia was there with maybe 5,000 Wagner people. They've been pulling their military out. Israel said, oh, wait a minute, we've got this Islamist group coming down and taking over Syria. I don't think Israel wants to govern Syria. They don't have enough people to do that. Israel's not a huge country. Their military is having enough trouble with what they're involved in right now. And so they're saying we don't want those Islamist guys to get their hands on the Syrian military equipment. Some were, you know, Air Force, helicopters, that sort of thing, and naval boats. Israel has engaged in hundreds of bombing runs to completely decimate what was left of the Syrian military. Russia's pulled their equipment out. And it's interesting because when we look at this configuration of this Ezekiel 38 thing, we know that Libya, the modern day areas of Libya and Sudan are involved in this. And so where is Russia taking their military equipment? Libya and Sudan. Where is Turkey involved in their military contractors? Libya and Sudan. So all of these things are coming together. Now, we don't know exactly when the trigger gets pulled on all of this, but there's a lot going on. So this march yesterday in Istanbul had easily, you can tell from the pictures, the videos of it, over 100,000 people involved. But Israel saw that there were some problems along the Golan Heights, so they moved into certain areas of the Golan Heights to create a little bit bigger. They're not taking over Syria. They're not marching on Damascus, but they extended their buffer zone and took over a large portion of the Syrian part of Mount Lebanon.
Wow.
I'm sorry, Mount Hermon.
Mount Hermon, yeah.
That sits there on the border of Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. So it's very significant. And the question is, how far are they going to go?
Yes.
And each day, more and more information comes out about how much intel Israel had gathered on Hezbollah. But now we're finding out that Hamas was gathering intel on Israel. And this sort of points to modern warfare. Hezbollah planned this. Hamas planned this attack on October 7th for years. They hacked into security cameras at these kibbutzim along the border. I've been in some of those kibbutzim just a couple of years ago. They had security cameras everywhere. They hacked cell phone data, so they knew how people moved through the kibbutzim. They knew where the safe rooms were in every home. There were 18,000 Palestinian people coming from Gaza every day to work in Israel. Those people were gathering intel. This is where the safe room is. This room is locked. This door is locked. This is how you get into and so they planned this. Israel's also been planning this. So you're seeing the manifestation of years and years and years of planning unfolding in a very short, compressed time frame.
Wow. So
Israel is facing 10 fronts. You have Gaza still is a problem. You have Hezbollah they haven't gone away. They're reconstituting themselves, but their leadership has been completely decimated. Iraq has sort of said, hey, Israel, we don't really want to be involved in this right now. Iran is involved, so that's 4. You have the Houthis in Yemen who continue to launch missiles into Israel. Some of them seem to be very fast missiles that are hard to shoot down. They don't really cause a lot of damage. They're not that accurate, but they're still terror weapons. I mean, every night about 1 million Israelis run to a bomb shelter because of a missile coming from Yemen because they don't know where it's going to go. And so it's wearing the people in Israel out mentally. I talked to them many times.
No doubt.
Then you have the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. They just killed in an operation just the other day. You probably didn't even hear about it. Between 100 and 150 terrorists in the areas of Judea and Samaria. So that's a fifth front. Yemen would be the sixth front. And then you have this international front, lawfare against Israel at the International Criminal Court. You have the social media attacks. And I had a 10th one. I can't remember what it was the other day. But they're really fighting this multi-front war. And it's a very small country. I want to go back to Erdogan just a moment, though.
Okay.
In December of 2017, President Trump it was like December 6th or 7th of 2017, I'm going to move the United States Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Right.
And you remember, and this was contrary to what just a year before the outgoing Obama administration, after the election, did not veto for the first time in the U.S. history with regard to Israel at the UN. They did not veto an anti-Israel, anti-Jerusalem, anti-settlement resolution at the UN. Trump rectified that. He did a couple things. He recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel, said he would move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. Within a couple of days, Erdogan and Turkey, I think we have to kind of step back sometimes and look at what happened historically, because it helps explain what's happening in the prophetic sense of what we think is coming. Mm-hmm. Erdogan organized a meeting of the 57 Islamic countries, Islamic states in the world, in Istanbul about the Jerusalem problem. And in connection with that, and in one of his main mouthpiece newspapers, it was about, we've got to protect Jerusalem. We got to protect Jerusalem. And all of the Muslim countries sent representatives to the meeting. We've got to solve this problem. We've got to protect Jerusalem. And then Erdogan said, what if the Muslim armies united and came against Israel? And his newspaper, Yeni Safek, I've used the graphic a lot. I'm not sure why other people haven't picked it up. You know, we make up our little maps of Ezekiel 38 and how these, what certainly appear to be Islamic countries, are going to invade Israel in the last days. Well, here's one of the leaders of one of the Islamic countries that we know is involved, putting up a map of the Islamic countries invading little tiny Israel, a little red dot in a sea of green. And so, I mean, I'm just like, look at what they say. Look at what they said in this poster for this march the other day. So this is very, very significant. And then in July, Erdogan came and gave a speech, and he said, Israel, we're going to come after Jerusalem like we sent people into Libya and Armenia.
Yeah, I have that quote in front of me. He was speaking in his hometown. He said, we must be very strong so that Israel can't do these ridiculous things to Palestine. Oh, you like protecting the world from terrorists, all that ridiculous stuff. He says, just like we entered Karabakh, just like we entered Libya, we might do similarly to them. And these things were widely reported. And now there's this terror state on the border of Israel because of HTS. One of the quotes you have here is HTS rebels said they're going to disband in the next few days. This will allow them to run Syria free of international sanctions. In short, a terrorist state has been created on the border of Israel. And what incredible geopolitical implications. John, how has this area held together all this time? You and I look at all these details and all these potential hotspots, potential areas of absolute disaster over there. It can only be that God is holding it together. The Holy Spirit is restraining something, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, this is insane. There is no other part of the world that could hold together with all of those threats.
Well, they do it through, they govern with a rod, an iron fist on their people. Yeah. They govern through terror. And even though al-Jilani is out, we want to be peace, we want to make peace with everybody. Druze villages in southern Syria, and the Druze are kind of they're an ethnic group, and they're kind of Islamic but not Islamic, and they consider themselves to be descendants of Jethro from the Bible. Okay. And, these things, the one thing you learn about these people is they all have very, very long memories. So, for example, 9/11
Yeah.
happened on a day that was very significant on the calendar to the people in Al-Qaeda. And so now we have a guy who was in Al-Qaeda, in ISIS, running Syria and acting like he's a man of peace. And there are people going around, they're slaughtering, people that were part of the Assad regime. They're executing them on the street. I saw pictures of up in the Kurdish regions of northeastern Syria. The Turkish troops had captured a couple of Kurdish soldiers, female, and just the videos are out there. They just shot him in the head.
Wow.
It's a very brutal thing. A lot of people are dying. And about a week ago, I can't remember her last name, Sarah. She was a CIA worker, military person. She was interviewed on the Sean Ryan podcast, and she said there are, and her specialty was Islamic terrorism, and she said there are 1,000 Islamic and Al Qaeda terrorists in the U.S. right now, ready to go, ready to do terror attacks, and they may be coordinated. So do the math, my friends. We have a big event coming up in Washington, D.C. in 18 days.
Wow. Yeah.
Almost, at noon on January 20th. By the way, which is, I think, should be the Martin Luther King holiday.
It is.
And it's also, by the way, January 20th is also the day that the next meeting of the World Economic Forum at Davos in Switzerland starts.
Interesting.
And by the way, the subject of that meeting, and I know we've thought about talking, maybe this is a way to transition to this. The subject of that meeting is artificial intelligence and computing. And we've seen these developments in artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Mary, yesterday morning, I don't know if it's almost like X could read my mind. My X feed was full of all of these AI tools that I can use to like increase traffic on our YouTube channel and that sort of thing. And I'm telling you, it was dozens and dozens and dozens of posts. Here are 20 AI tools. Google just came out with a new computer called Willow.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that quantum chip.
It is so much faster. So there's a test for these quantum computers. They were able to do in 5 minutes solve this problem. They're correct. The quantum computing led to a lot of errors, and they're correcting that. They're now able to solve this sort of test problem in 5 minutes that it would take other computers 10 to the 27th power, 10 with 27 zeros.
Septillion something, yeah.
Yeah, septillions, or it's a number that we can't. It's certainly longer than the universe has existed, even under the evolutionary models.
Right.
This is now happening right in front of us. This technology is making its way into drones. I mean, look at some of the drone shows that took place in China over the New Year holiday. And it's interesting. They have like these dragons flying through the sky. Well, if they can coordinate all the drones, thousands of drones to do that.
Yeah.
They can coordinate thousands of drones for a military attack.
That's right.
Drone technology is changing the war in Ukraine and Russia. Russia said they're going to do this in 2 weeks. It's been, in another month, it'll be 3 years since they invaded Ukraine. They're still fighting it. And I'm seeing these images of Russian military units being chased down by drones in Ukraine. And it's frightening. And you need to understand they can do that. And guess who is now? Some of the military and Telegram military channels today have put out videos saying the world leader in drone technology now is Turkey.
Interesting.
And so I'm just saying I've talked about this for a long time, that there's an acceleration in convergence of all of these things. Remember the old phrase from one of Hemingway's novels. How did you go bankrupt? One character says to another, and the guy goes, "Well, I went bankrupt in two ways: gradually, then suddenly." And I think this is how this
Yeah.
Bible prophecy thing is going to
Yeah.
unfold. And that's the pattern, by the way, that Jesus' first coming, 60% of the prophecies related to his first coming were fulfilled in the last week of his life.
Yeah.
So I think we should expect that pattern to hold. So I've talked about this acceleration and convergence. And I know from, I do these programs with, people, Olivier Melnick and Tom Hughes and Pete Garcia and all these people. We're always talking and texting, and it's like, I can't keep up with everything that's going on. Then you take that into the realm of computer technology, which I think is the formation of the Mark of the Beast system. By the way, I'm going to be doing a prophecy roundtable with Scott Townsend, Tom Hughes, Britt Gillette, and Patrick Wood next Wednesday, January 8th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
I'll be on our YouTube channel and other places. We're going to talk about the developments in technology and AI. And we did one 2 months ago, and it's sort of like, well, we'll do another one when we have enough time. Well, we've had enough stuff to do something 2 weeks after the last one.
Right.
With recent developments. So I just think that this is the way this is going to go in 2025, is we're going to see this acceleration of all these things that are happening. And it's a little bit difficult to, it's hard to grasp, but we need to remember this. So these old Bible prophecies have been around for millennia. They're going to unfold in a real world. And so the ultimate question is, do we live at that time? It certainly seems that a lot of the signs are all pointing to the fact that we do live at that time. And we know how Lindsay recently passed away, and how Lindsay wrote a definitive book on this 50 some years ago. Well, and he wrote based on the world that existed at that time, the Russian Empire, the Soviet Empire, that type of thing. That world doesn't exist right now. And so we need to kind of look at what the prophecies say and sort of look at how they're going to piece together and unfold in the world that we live in.
Absolutely. When you read in Revelation, I can't think which verse it is, but it says the things which must quickly take place. That doesn't mean necessarily soon to the people who read that. That quickly is the word that we get tachometer from. So it's a measurement of how fast things are going to happen. I think this year especially, somebody's got their foot on the gas, and times are getting perilous. Unlike any other, you read those verses, unlike any other time ever in history, we are the only people who I think really understand what that could possibly mean. And even that, John, we can't see a minute into the future. So we're relying on what we know about prophecy and what we're seeing around us, and it is absolutely mind-boggling. Probably only have time for one more question, John, but I wanted to ask you, how will quantum computing change our lives? And I think you've kind of mentioned that. But this quantum chip, this Willow, is it operational, or is it still in the experimental stage?
It's still in the development stage, but these things are happening very, very quickly. I mean, I could go back to earlier in 2024. I was talking to my wife last night about it. Like, we talk about all the things that happened in 2024. Okay. I've done programs, like what recap of the year. We had a total eclipse here in my backyard in April.
Yeah.
And we don't even talk about that because it seems like it happened like 8 years ago.
Right.
And so the stuff in the technology. So I think what you're going to see intrusive technology. You're going to see a push for peace in Jerusalem. And I just was looking at a calendar for the 2030 agenda of all the meetings that they have planned for this year, including, by the way, there's this group that's meeting. It's called some geopolitical group for the implementation of the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution in Israel. So we have that. We have the technology development. And I just think what you're going to see in the technology development is you're going to see a push to use it. It's already being used to control our speech, to shape our thinking. So I don't know if somebody's trying to change my mind about Israel, But I'm telling you that my Twitter feed is full of Jew hatred stuff that's unlike anything I never thought I would ever see in my lifetime. Holocaust denial. And by the way, Candace Owens is going to have one of the biggest Holocaust deniers on her. I was going to release a video in the next few days with a big interview with a Holocaust denier.
Wow.
She has completely gone off the rails.
Yeah, she has. Absolutely.
On this issue. And so we need to watch for this, that this is coming. And they're going to do this. They're going to do all of this technology to control speech and thought and that type of thing. And so even though, everybody thinks we got a reprieve with Trump, I don't think we're getting a reprieve with Trump.
Wow, John, we're out of time. Thank you so much for your time. It's always interesting. Your insights are so valuable. We appreciate that so much. And I have Britt Gillette next Thursday, so we're going to talk about what you guys talked about. Kyle Peart and Flynn Hughesby tomorrow. Headlines next Tuesday. Stay with me for lots more in 2025. Have a great day.